Oi! I feel like I haven't done this in forever. What's going on, you guys? I mean, look at how ready Smooth Jimmy is there. Look at how broad that smile is. Look at the cigar. He's ready. He's ready to pick some fights, man. Are you guys ready? Because I'm ready. And that means it's time for another episode of Balls Deep Breakdown with me, your host, Uncle Weezy. We got a real banger for you guys today here. I am going to be breaking down the Ronnie Lawrence versus Trevin Jones fight that's going to be happening in UFC Vegas 33 this weekend, Saturday. This is going to be such a good fight, and Ronnie Lawrence is such a fantastic prospect, and Trevin Jones has really shit in some people's apple pies because he has won as a massive underdog 2 times in a row. So we're going to get into the stats here for this fight. And before we do, we're just going to say what's up to my guy, Grayson, who is in the room. Let's go, Uncle Weezy. Let's go, Grayson. Let's go balls deep into the stats. My man, Dave, in the room, too. What's up, Dave? Let the numbers talk. Sup, dude? Sup, Dave? Good to see you coming in, checking in all the way from across that giant pond that we call the Atlantic Ocean. Love to see you in here, my man. Thanks for everybody hanging out with me here. And let's get into these stats, dude. Let's go balls deep on this fight and start like we always do with the tail of the tape. All right, Ronnie Lawrence, Trevin Jones. Only 1 year in age separates these guys. Only 1 inch in height separates these guys. But Trevin Jones does have a 70-inch reach. He is a southpaw fighter, while Ronnie Lawrence fights out of both stances. Ronnie Lawrence really kind of like a kung fu base in his striking. He throws a lot of back kicks to the body, spinning heel kicks to the body. Trevin Jones, as a southpaw, has got a lot of power in that lead right hand. The 2 knockouts that he has, or the 2 knockdowns that he has in the UFC thus far, are courtesy of that lead right hand, a lead right hook in the Valiev fight, and a lead right uppercut in the Bautista fight, is how he got those knockdowns, which then led to a very quick ground and pound finish after he got them down. We see that Ronnie Lawrence training out of ATT. We got Vita BJJ for Trevin Jones. He is fighting out of Guam, while we've got Ronnie Lawrence fighting out of the United States. Let's get into the pro experience here, because this is where we're going to see an advantage for Trevin Jones. He's got 20 professional fights, while Ronnie Lawrence only has 8. We see that a 13-6 and 1 no contest record for Trevin Jones, while we got Ronnie Lawrence being 7-1. Ronnie Lawrence's only loss came by decision to Steve Garcia in Bellator. I did not get to see that fight, unfortunately, because I have not been able to find a link to it anywhere. I would love to watch that fight because it's the only fight thus far in Lawrence's career where he has lost, but I can't see the fight. So we will look at the cage time here and see that we got about 150 more minutes in the professional cage for Trevin Jones at 228.5 minutes compared to 68 for Lawrence here. And we got an average fight time about 3 minutes longer for Trevin Jones here at 11.5 minutes to 8.5 for Lawrence. And we see that Trevin Jones has been doing this about twice as long at 10 years and 2 months compared to a little under 6 years for Ronnie Lawrence in the pro game. Now, if we look at the UFC experience here, we will see that both of these guys have 2 fights. Trevin Jones is basically 2-0. You guys know how I feel about losses because of marijuana. That is such bullshit. Marijuana, not a performance enhancer in MMA. End of discussion, okay? Trust me, I've spent enough hours of my life high to know that I don't do shit as well high as I do anything else, except for talk about fights with you guys, which is always fun. But, we gotta stick to what we're good at, don't we? And we know that Trevin Jones is 2-0 in the UFC. However, that fight against Valiev, he was in a whole heap of trouble. He really got hurt with a body shot. And it's very important that he got hurt with a body shot because Ronnie Lawrence throws a lot of spinning back kicks to the body. So that could be a weapon that we see Lawrence using from his stand-up game here. But we do see that Trevin Jones has finished both of his wins in the UFC at 6.38 minutes average fight time. He's only got 12.77 minutes between his 2 fights. For Ronnie Lawrence, we got a 3rd round finish against Vince Cachero in his UFC debut, and prior to that, in his Contender Series fight, he went the distance. So if we look at these guys' finish stats here, we see that Ronnie Lawrence has a 57% overall finish rate here, all of them by KO. Very important to note that he doesn't have any submission victories. And he has finished one of the 2 UFC fights, including the Contender Series fight. The Contender Series fight went to decision, and he finished Cachero. So if we look at the Trevin Jones numbers here, we see that he's got a 100% finish rate in his UFC fights, but only a 54% overall finish rate. So he has not finished a lot of fights here. We see that 19, 20 professional fights, and only 54% of them have finished. So we're looking at that would mean 11 of those 20 fights. So 9 of his 20 fights have went to decision. So, Trevin Jones, not much of a finisher prior to getting to the UFC when he was fighting on the regional scene in the Far East. I saw him fighting in Korea a couple of different times. I know he's had some fights in Guam, probably, but he fights around. He fought in the Pacific region before coming to the UFC, we see here that how these guys lose. Ronnie Lawrence's only loss came by decision, and Trevin Jones in his 6 losses has only been finished once, and that was by submission. And I think it was kind of a long time ago. If we look at Trevin Jones's record here, maybe we can find when it was that he lost by submission. And yeah, it was to Alvin Kakdak. That's a great name, Alvin Kakdak. And that was at PXC 40 back in 2013. With 38 seconds left in the second round, he succumbed to a rear naked choke. So yeah, Alvin Kakdak was the guy who got the choke back in 2013. It's been that long since Trevin Jones has been submitted by anybody, and since then he has never been finished. So it does appear that between these guys' 7 losses, that we only have one of those fights finishing inside the distance. Maybe the fight going to decision in this case would be a solid bet here. We'll have to look at the odds when we get through the rest of the stats. But let's get into let's first of all see what the chat has to say here. We got Thomas Howard in the room. Good to see you, Thomas. Thanks for always joining us for these balls deep breakdowns. Appreciate you coming in. We got Ahmed in here. What's your best pick for Saturday, Uncle Weezy? Boy, that's a good question. We got a whole bunch of fights to look at here. And, in the Benoit Adeshev fight, I do like Benoit. I think he's way more experienced. Rokosi, I don't have a big lean either way. You will have to wait till the end of the balls deep breakdown to find out who your Uncle Weezy likes in this fight. Fry Yoder, I don't care. Chavez Kamaka, I'm going to be breaking that one down next on my channel. That will be the next balls deep breakdown coming later tonight at you guys. I will post on Twitter when that one will be going live. Kretzenmacher Garcia, I am pretty confident in Rafa Garcia here over Gritzenmacher. Gritzenmacher, a very one-dimensional fighter who's getting a little bit old. Anglin Bagdasarian, I have to tape that one. Montano Yanan, don't care. Stoltzy Lazez, need to tape it. I am confident in Barberena over Witt because Barberena does hit hard and Witt is very chinny. So I think Barberena is a very good as well this week. Don't care. Abdurrahimov Dawkins is off. Alvi Kopilov is out. And I do like Uriah Hall as an underdog, but I'm not confident in that pick. I think Strickland wins the fight. I just think the line is too wide. So to answer your question, my 2 favorite picks of the week thus far are Barberena and Garcia. And then we'll get into how I'm feeling about this one here. Bookies being super lazy with props, says Dave Bandit. Man, are you right about that? My go-to prop book was FanDuel Sportsbook. They were doing a great job in the MMA space, and they were getting their props out 2-3 days ahead of DraftKings, and now they're slacking right now. I'm sorry to say it, but it looks like the guys at FanDuel Sportsbook over on the MMA side are a little bit asleep at the wheel. I was counting on a lot more from them because they used to be my favorite sportsbook, but now DraftKings has really kind of pulled in and is doing just as well as them right now. So I'm happy to see that they just that DraftKings at least is doing way better. And FanDuel, get your shit together, man. You're slipping. You got to work harder. We got Dan Goldstein in the room. What's up, Dan? Relax and take notes while I take notes of the marijuana smoke. Sup, guys? What's up, Dan? Good to have you in here. Now they pulled Dawkins. This card is the sex appeal of a Nana Grandad Maritos. Boy, oh boy. That is a very vivid visual that you just painted for us there, but I have to agree with you 100%. There's a lot of don't care fights on this card, but the Lawrence Jones is not a don't care fight. So let's get into this 2-fight sample size and the striking statistics that we have here. So Ronnie Lawrence landing 3.8 significant strikes out of 6.48 offered per minute. Really nice, very high 59% striking accuracy. And we see Trevin Jones landing 3.84 out of 6.27. So even though he's throwing just a little bit less volume per minute than Lawrence, he's actually landing at a higher percentage at 61.25%. And Trevin Jones has 2 knockdowns thus far in the UFC and only 49 significant strikes landed. So that is a 4.08% knockdowns per total significant strikes landed. In my metric, that's about as good as it gets for a bantamweight. I mean, it's a very small sample size, but even if you do look at some of Trevin Jones's prior to the UFC experience, you will see this dude has got power. He knocks people down. His lead right hand is a deadly weapon, but I've also seen him on the Korean regional scene get a knockout with his left hand as well. And that dude didn't get up for a while. He was in bad shape. When Trevin Jones lands clean, folks, it hurts. So, I think people have doubted him twice coming, into the UFC as a huge underdog. The first one on short notice against a killer like Valiev. And we saw that Valiev just got a win over Barcelos, even though it was really just a draw. Still an impressive performance by Valiev, making that win by Jones over him look even more impressive now. So Jones is landing 2.35 knockdowns per 15 minutes, while Ronnie Lawrence hasn't recorded a knockdown in his 2 UFC fights thus far. If you look at the striking defense, we see really great ratios, significant strike defense, and striking defense percentages here for Ronnie Lawrence. And it's a function of his top and wrestling game. When we get into the grappling stats, you'll see why he's been so dominant here in terms of his ratios. But he's landing 3.8 significant strikes per minute while only absorbing 1.1. So he is more than tripling the output of his opponents in terms of landing significant strikes thus far in the UFC. It's just incredibly, incredibly impressive, the 2 performances that he's had thus far. While Trevin Jones is landing 3.84 significant strikes, he is absorbing 6.81. Now, this was because of the Valiev fight. He was really getting murdered in that first round, and that could have easily wound up being a loss for him. The fight could have easily been stopped. He got hurt really bad with a body shot from Valiev. Valiev kind of emptied the tank trying to finish the fight. He didn't get the finish, and in the second round, Jones landed that huge lead right hook that I was talking about earlier, which is one of his best weapons, getting the knockdown. But only 35.56% striking defense. We can't really look too much into these numbers because, like we said, only a 2-fight sample size for both of these guys. And the Jones fight, he really was getting beaten pretty badly. The Bautista fight for Trevin Jones was a lot closer, but he still knocked out Bautista, but it wasn't as one-sided as the first round of that Valiev-Jones fight was. So, yeah, very impressive striking ratios, landing 3.8 and only absorbing 1.09 for Ronnie Lawrence. And he's almost tripling the output of his opponents, too. And that's because he's had such a dominant top game and such a great offensive wrestling game thus far in his 2 fights. We'll look at it right here. We got 20 out of 26 successful takedown attempts for Ronnie Lawrence here. He is getting takedowns at a 77% clip thus far in the UFC, averaging, yes, that is not a typo, 10.86 takedowns per 15 minutes. Absolutely crazy volume. Those are video game numbers, and he gets those video game numbers and finished 1 fight in the 3rd round with all kinds of gas left in the tank. In his Contender Series fight, which went the distance, he pulled the Clay Guida after the fight was over and got up and basically started running laps around the cage. And we know any of the old school mixed martial artist fans know that Clay Guida is one of the original cardio kings. And Ronnie Lawrence was doing the exact same thing that Clay used to do back in the day when he'd get up and he'd run those laps around the cage after winning the decision. The guy's got amazing conditioning. His heart pumps blood at a non-human level. To get 26 takedown attempts in less than 30 minutes and get 20 of them, amass a 65% control time. This guy has got a really unusual weapon in his conditioning because it allows him to put a pace on his opponents that his opponents just simply can't handle. If we look at Trevin Jones, he's gotten one of his 5 takedown attempts in the UFC. So he's averaging 2.5 takedown attempts per fight, only getting 0.5 takedown attempts per fight, 20% takedown percentage, averaging over 1 takedown per 15 minutes. And he's getting 17.36% control time while only yielding 1.31% control time. Now, that's going to be important because we see that for Ronnie Lawrence, 64.78% offensive control time, only allowing just under 7% control time. Ronnie Lawrence's biggest weapon thus far is basically being able to out-control his opponents at almost a 10-to-1 clip. While if we look at Trevin Jones, he's actually out-controlling his opponents at like a 12-to-1 clip, but it's because he's not really getting controlled at all. So Trevin Jones is a no-gi grappling champion. So he does have a very legit ground game. However, what I saw on the regional scene for Trevin Jones was that he got taken down quite a bit. If we go and look at Trevin Jones's previous fights here on the Tapology page, we will see the wins over Bautista, the no contest over Valiev, which is a win because he just tested positive for marijuana there. That's a win. But in the Takafumi Atsuka fight, he got 4 takedowns. Atsuka got 4 takedowns versus Jones. I think he only attempted 4 takedowns too. He got every takedown that he attempted, and he held him down and really did something that we would expect that Lawrence might be wanting to do to Jones here, which is take him down, control him, because Jones has shown so much power in that lead right hand of his. Lawrence's best path to victory might be dealing with Jones's bottom game, because I haven't seen much, even though Jones is a no-gi grappling champion, I haven't seen much in terms of Trevin Jones doing stuff from his back. Atsuka really did a good job of controlling him. That was his last fight before the UFC. So Atsuka did have a good offensive wrestling game against Trevin Jones. That's going to be very important because we obviously see that Ronnie Lawrence has a tremendous ability to offensive wrestle. He has the gas tank to be able to do it for a full 15 minutes and really wear down his opponents. But when Atsuka tried for the 5th takedown attempt and got a little sloppy, Jones got on top of him, and it was a matter of time before, I would say less than 30 seconds before he locked up that rear naked choke. So Trevin Jones is definitely most dangerous when he's on top. So if Trevin Jones wants to get an advantage in this fight, I think he's going to have to be the one trying takedowns before Lawrence does. But Lawrence does a really good job of managing distance when he strikes, because a lot of people see all those takedown attempts. They see 26 takedown attempts in 2 fights for Lawrence, and he's gotten 20 of them. 77%, 65% control time. So you're saying to yourself, okay, this guy is a pure wrestler, but his striking is really good. If you go back and you watch the regional scene footage on Ronnie Lawrence on the tape index, the first 2 fights that he won that are available, it was his pro debut, and then there was a fight after that. I don't know if it was his 2nd, 3rd, or 4th fight, but he didn't throw any takedown attempts in either of those fights. He strictly used his kung fu-based striking to win. He got a knockout via spinning back kick in the first round in his debut. And in the second fight, he just used his striking. I believe he got a late finish in that one, but it was all striking. He didn't even go to his wrestling. So for those of you who are thinking that Ronnie Lawrence is a one-dimensional, pure wrestler, pure pace, pure offensive wrestling guy, I'm here to tell you the guy's got really nice striking too. He doesn't show the kind of power that Trevin Jones has been showing thus far, because Trevin Jones has been sleeping dudes. But Ronnie Lawrence can strike from a distance. He uses a lot of kicks. He's got good hands too, and he's constantly moving. That's one of the reasons he's going to be good defensively, even when this fight is standing, is because he's really doing a great job of constantly moving. And that's a function of the conditioning that we were talking about earlier as well. So right now, I see Lawrence's best weapons as that all-around game, the constant movement. I think he's going to give Trevin Jones a ton of problems, a ton of different looks. And when we talk about those 20 takedown attempts that he's gotten, he's not one-dimensional the way that he gets takedowns. I was taking notes on this guy, and I saw him get trips, reaps, single legs, double legs, suplexes, like Greco-Roman style belly-to-back suplexes, and sweeps. This guy gets all kinds of different takedowns. He doesn't have a one-dimensional offensive wrestling attack. He really does hit takedowns from a number of different angles. It's just a really, really, really impressive offensive wrestling and offensive grappling game that we're seeing out of Lawrence. And I haven't seen much in terms of Jones being able to be dangerous from his back yet. A lot of the fights on the tape index, the links were dead. So I've only got to really watch about 4 of Trevin Jones's fights, but I saw him taken down easily. I saw him controlled from the top. I do see that great power that he has, and he does have it in both hands. But the one other thing that we got to look at here is that in Ronnie Lawrence's 2 fights thus far in the UFC, he's faced 3 takedowns and hasn't given up any. So if that 100% takedown defense does hold up, Trevin Jones is going to have a tough road to hoe here, because, Ronnie Lawrence puts on a crazy pace. Ronnie Lawrence can, whenever he doesn't like how it's going on the feet, he can immediately just start going to that wrestling. And that's a big time game changer as well, because when a fighter has that tremendous conditioning along with the ability to choose where the fight takes place, man, it just makes it really difficult for them to be beat. It makes it really difficult for them to make bad decisions, because they're good everywhere. So I am really leaning Ronnie Lawrence here. Before we get into the strength of schedule stats, which aren't quite as important, let's see what's going on here in the chat. See what's happening. Here we go. Oh, yeah. Got my man DFS by the numbers. Big Brady. What's up? What's up, Brady? Thanks for joining us here, man. I'm interested to know which way you're leaning on this one. I was just watching the main event breakdown that you released on your channel this morning and saw what you were talking about there. But yeah, man, this is a very interesting fight. One of the ones that Brady asked me to break down, and it was definitely my second favorite behind the Strickland Hall on this card. So, and now that Abdurrahimov Dawkins got canceled, that kind of ruined the balls deep breakdown that I had prepared for last night. But thanks for joining us, Brady. We got Blake Marquis in the room. Great beats last week, Weezy. Welcome back from vacation. Yeah, man. Thanks, dude. I appreciate that. It was a nice vacation. I had to take the 3rd day of golf off so I could get all the work done for Stat Diggers and be ready for this week. But it was actually kind of a pleasure, because it was like 95 degrees out there every day. I was kind of worn out from all the partying and the golfing from the first 2 days. So stayed home, did a little data entry, got ready for this week, got ready for the balls deep breakdowns. So I'm glad you guys are joining me. Thanks for coming in, Blake. And we got DFS by the numbers telling us Trevin Jones only 3 MMA knockouts. Where is this power coming from? Dude, I don't know, man, but the one on the Korean regional scene, he landed a left. It was the Jae Hyun So fight. Dude, I don't know if that guy is still not gotten up. He was absolutely slept, and it was the left hand that did it. And so he only had 1 knockout prior to coming into the UFC. And then after in his 19th and 20th fights, he gets a knockout over Timur Valiev, and he gets a knockout over Mario Bautista, both in the lead right hand, which he had no knockouts in 18 prior fights with that right hand. So, nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw the power from Jones coming, but he does have it. It's just that I think that because he's a no-gi grappling champion, that he winds up using that grappling a little bit more on the regional scene than trusting his power. And now that he knows that he does have power and he can carry that power up here at the UFC level, maybe we'll see him start to have a little more faith in his striking, which is going to make him a very dangerous opponent for anybody. But right now, the way Ronnie Lawrence is fighting, man, I don't know who's going to be able to beat this guy, because that unique combination of skill sets it's going to be a problem for anyone. And Ronnie isn't a small bantamweight either. He's a good size for the division. He's not undersized. And when you put that conditioning on top of that with the the really diverse offensive wrestling game, the fantastic heart, and a really underrated striking game, man. I really like this guy. Aldo Estrada, my guy in the room, saying Ronnie Lawrence by grapple fook. Yeah, and dude, yeah, we've seen Trevin Jones get grapple fooked in the past. If you go back and you look at that regional scene footage, and for a guy that gets 20 takedowns in 2 fights, it's there, right? So we got Dan Goldstein saying, go watch Brady's breakdown and prediction video after this. And at 35:05, you hear a grown man die a little inside. I wonder if the 35:05 mark, now I'm just taking a wild guess, was right around when he got into the Gloria DePaula Cheyenne Bays fight, or it might have been the Wu Yanan Nico Montano fight. Either way, just not some of the best fights that we've seen this year. But hey, like Brady said, and he's right, it's a Saturday. We got 13 fights to watch. It could be way worse, folks. We got Robbie in the room saying Jones by KO. Yeah, and dude, Jones showing that power now. That power that wasn't there. 1 knockout in 18 fights, and then all of a sudden, bam, bam, Timur Valiev and Mario Bautista added to his resume via KO. So crazy stuff. We got Davey in the room saying Ronnie, he'd fire. Yeah, Ronnie Lawrence is amazing, dude. Thanks for coming in, Davey. He's saying Ronnie is Houdini, too fast for Jones to catch. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was saying, dude. You watch the stand-up footage of Lawrence. He's constantly moving. So, yeah, Jones's power is compelling, and he's been showing it, and we have to be believers in it because we've seen it twice at the highest level now. And, and he's landing. When he lands on the button, people go to sleep. So, but the problem is that Ronnie Lawrence is constantly moving, and he's not going to get tired. He's not going to slow down. So Jones isn't going to be able to catch this dude if he stays on his bike and keeps throwing those spinning kicks from a distance. It's going to be really hard for him to deal with. But let's look at the strength of schedule stats here that I have prepared. And let's get this on the screen so we can see the last 5 for these guys there at the bottom. We'll start up here. We see that Trevin Jones has faced thus far the better competition. There's no question about it. With Timur Valiev and Mario Bautista in his 2 fights, he was big underdogs in both those fights. I think Bautista was a -250 favorite, which probably would have put Jones probably +200. And then I remember Valiev was, he was in the neighborhood of -400, -500, because Trevin Jones took that fight on such short notice. That he was just obviously, and rightfully so, probably a +350 underdog. So yeah, the average record of the UFC fighter that he's faced at this point has 2 wins and only 0.5 losses for a 4-to-1 win-loss ratio. While we see that Ronnie Lawrence really hasn't beaten anybody yet, that would get us all excited, as he's got a win over Vince Cachero and the Contender Series win against Jose Johnson. So the win for Ronnie Lawrence is against a guy with, an average record of no wins and 0.5 losses, while the average Trevin Jones win is 2 wins, 1 loss. So yeah, definitely Jones, and that's not even counting really the Valiev win, because it's a no contest. I have to, treat it as such, but really his ratio is 4-1. And that's the ratio of the guys that he's beaten. He's beaten guys with an average record of 2 and 0.5. So yeah, Trevin Jones doing a fantastic job thus far. And we look, just examine the records here. We see wins over Takafumi Atsuka 25-15-1. A win over Mehdi Badulayev 6-1. 2 losses via split decision. To Rodrigo Praya, 11-3 in ACB, and then to Young Jin Huang, 5-3 in TFC, And then he's got the knockout win over Jae-Hyun So, who's 10-13. Kyle Aguan, Jeremiah Labiano, that's a familiar name. He's got a loss to former UFC veteran Kwan Ho Kwak via split decision. One thing I did notice about Jones is that he has 6 split decisions on his record. We do know the loss to Alvin Kakdak, and then Kyle Agnoan. So yeah, that's pretty much the record here for Jones. 20 fights, only 1 no contest. A lot of this stuff, he's been fighting professionally since 2011. So a lot of this stuff on the Pacific regional scene here. And then if we look at Ronnie Lawrence, we'll see that his only pro loss came to Steve Garcia via decision. It was a unanimous decision, but I don't know what happened in that fight. I'd like to know what happened in that fight. I'd like to see some tape on that fight, because I want to know how Ronnie Lawrence lost, because I still haven't seen a loss from this guy. So it would be nice to be able to picture how it happened. But we see wins over Garrett Armfield 2-0, Michael Ricketts 5-4. The loss to Steve Garcia, who has fought in the UFC. So the only guy that has beaten him is a UFC veteran who actually is 0-1 in the UFC thus far. But he's got some names on his list. Elon Cruz, we saw him get a UFC win. Joe Warren, veteran Bellator. Ricky Tercios, who's on this version of The Ultimate Fighter. So he's got some names. Steve Garcia does. So, Ronnie Lawrence really doesn't have what I would call a signature win yet. So Trevin Jones will probably be his best win next to Cachero thus far, because we don't see any names here. Josh Carter 4-2, Adam Fritz 3-0, Brandon Webb 2-0, Michael Ricketts 5-4, Garrett Armfield 2-0, and then the Jose Johnson win on the Contender Series, and then the win over 7-3, Vince Cachero. So this fight was supposed to be against John Castaneda, but Castaneda had to drop out. Trevin Jones was supposed to fight Tony Kelly last week, so these guys got matched up. So neither one of these guys is taking the fight on short notice, but it is a short notice opponent for both of them, because they both kind of had a last minute, not totally last minute, but a late opponent change. So I would definitely give Trevin Jones the strength of schedule advantage here. I feel like he's fought the tougher brand of competition thus far. And let's look at, first of all, let's talk about the chat here, as we see E Livelong saying, well, I post my bets on my socials. I'm going to plan on starting to do that, but I'm building some analytics right now. So right now, the bets that I'm placing are very small bets. And I'm really just a little bit more interested on my channel into going balls deep on these fights that I have good statistics and good sample sizes on, to help you guys make better gambling decisions. It helps me make better gambling decisions. But until I get some kind of a hardcore method down that I back test and that I feel will have a really good chance to be profitable in the long term, I won't be placing my bets, but those will be coming very soon. Thank you for asking me that, I appreciate it. We see that Devi Persaud is saying Jose Johnson had a highlight reel of 5 KOs, a 4-inch height advantage, and 5-inch reach advantage on Ronnie. He was pretty scary striker, but he fought smart and won by unanimous decision. Dude, I remember Dana saying that he was really blown away by Ronnie Lawrence's performance against Jose Johnson on the Contender Series, and that dude was an absolutely gigantic bantamweight. Johnson was. So I think that even though Dana likes people to win by knockout or get a finish on the Contender Series in order to get that contract, I think that the people who had kind of set up that matchup were kind of expecting Johnson to be the one that got the win there, and they were just so impressed by Lawrence getting a win over such a tough opponent in Johnson that he's the one that got the contract, even though he didn't get a finish. But it was a tremendous performance by him. Just the pace that he put on Johnson was crazy, and yeah, that's why people, the hype is real on this dude. And then he came in against Cachero and did the same thing. But this is going to be a step up for him. And he took a flying knee from Steve Garcia and could not see out of one eye for the remainder of the fight. See, I haven't seen that fight, so that's why I need to see that. It's so, anybody can get beat, obviously. And, and if Trevin Jones does land a big shot, he hurts people. So that's probably Jones's path to victory. Or if Jones can get on top, if he could sweep Ronnie Lawrence from the bottom. What I did notice about Trevin Jones on the regional scene is that his top game is very good. He's very good if he gets on top. But so far, we've seen 100% takedown defense from Lawrence. And, the fact that he's been so great with his offensive wrestling and that Trevin Jones's takedown defense hasn't been good, I don't think it's going to be particularly likely that Jones gets top position much in this fight. Excuse me. Let me just get a little water here. All right. And let's see here. So let's take a look at these odds now. We got them up on the screen. We see Ronnie Lawrence right now, minus 160 on most books. I think the best lines that we can see, minus 145 here on DraftKings and BetMGM. And it looks like the aggregate line for this fight is probably around minus 153. It looks like Ronnie Lawrence opened around minus 180, got bet down to about minus 230, and then steadily money is coming in here on Trevin Jones, getting the line back up to about minus 150 on the aggregate, and that's about where it's been sitting around. But it does kind of look like it's weighing down towards going back towards minus 200 again. And if we look at the props that are available, there are only 8 of them, but we can see that the over 2.5 minus 110, under 2.5 minus 120. I'm liking the over in this fight because in the 7 combined losses for these guys, only one time have they been finished. So when you're getting just a little bit better than 45 to 46% odds on that, I feel that that's a pretty good bet. I do like this fight going to decision, despite the fact that, Jones has a really good top game and has really good power. But I do see that, Lawrence could grapple foot this guy for the 15 minutes and, could get a win that way. So I do like the over in this fight. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 155, while the fight goes to decision is plus money, plus 125 right now. I kind of like that, but it's plus 100 and plus 105 on the other books that it's available. Lawrence inside the distance is plus 190, and Jones inside the distance plus 240 right now is the best bets out there. So what are you guys thinking here? Do you guys have any leans here? Because I'm telling you that I like Ronnie Lawrence by decision here. I really do see when the striking, when this fight is on the feet, that Ronnie Lawrence is going to be constantly moving. He's going to be a moving target, very difficult to hit. And that when he is hit, he's going to be able to go to that wrestling, and due to the fact that Trevin Jones hasn't shown great takedown defense from what I've seen thus far, that this could be a potential for, Ronnie Lawrence should just rinse and repeat takedowns and keep getting those 10.86 takedowns per 15 minutes. Trevin Jones hasn't had any takedowns shot on him yet in the UFC. So it's definitely, people might think, oh, we don't know if it's going to be easy to take this guy down. But if you watch the regional footage, you'll know that it is easy to take down Trevin Jones and control him from the top. So my pick here is definitely going to be Ronnie Lawrence. I'm going to be picking him by decision. And I probably will be betting Ronnie Lawrence by decision, but I'll probably wind up getting at least a unit deep on this fight, maybe getting 1.25 units deep on a money line bet, and then maybe 0.5 units deep on a decision bet, and then even maybe 0.25 units deep on a third round finish, just because of the tremendous pace that this guy puts on. It could be a problem for anybody to survive a third round with Ronnie Lawrence, with his great conditioning, his great top control, and his really solid ground and pound that he does mix in there from the top. So I got, let's see here. What do you guys have going in here for me for the chat? We got Jack Attack stepping in. What's up, Jack? Saying good read on Elkins last week. Yeah, man, that was a good read. I cashed that money line bet, and I also cashed the inside, or not the inside the distance, but I had the fight doesn't go to decision bet there to cover the Minner side as well, because we know that when Minner wins, he generally gets a win by submission, except for in the Rosa fight. So there was a lot of recency bias when that fight doesn't go to decision line. Definitely took advantage of that, and took advantage of the fact that Elkins hadn't been submitted. That was something that we found in the numbers here on Balls Deep Breakdown. Elkins hadn't been submitted since, his second fight in the UFC against one Charles Oliveira. That was at 145 pounds, and this guy is now the 155-pound champion. So, yeah, to think that he might be able to survive that early storm from Minner was a good bet. We cashed it. On to the next one. Let's keep making this money. We got Thomas Howard saying, can't touch this fight, but I lean Lawrence. Yeah, I'm going to be touching this fight, but I like Lawrence quite a bit here. I think he's a unique problem for anybody that's going to face him right now. And because I haven't seen the Garcia fight, it's still almost impossible for me to picture this guy losing, even though he does have a loss. We got Bryan saying, I think that if Ronnie really takes advantage of his grappling skills, he will definitely win. And he does. He's got a great top game. He's got great wrestling, and he's got a number of different ways to take you down. He's not a one-dimensional takedown artist, as I discussed earlier in the show. We got Dan saying, I was thinking of violence play because Trev has them hands, but Devi pointed out the durability of Lawrence, so I'm converted to the Ronnie side. Yeah, I like Ronnie quite a bit here, and I would not be betting violence in this fight. Because Lawrence is so good defensively, and because both of these guys are incredibly tough. 7 combined losses, only 1 inside the distance. And like we covered, that was Alvin Kakdak that submitted Mr. Jones, but that was back in 2013. It was 8 years ago. It's kind of like the Elkins situation last week. We haven't seen either of these guys submitted in a long time. We got Big Brady saying, love this fight on DK. And yeah, that's a great point. I might be 100% exposed to this fight on DK because the pace that Lawrence puts on is absolutely crazy, absolutely nuts. And if we actually go to the advanced stats here, I can show you Trevin Jones fights. He's scoring, these are the DraftKings numbers. He's scoring 4.09 DraftKings points per minute and allowing 3.88. Those are huge numbers. Usually you see people right around the low threes, between the high 2s and the low 3s for DraftKings points per minute, right around 3. When you see people over 4, that means they're putting out a pace. And that's Trevin Jones. Let's look at Ronnie Lawrence here. I think, no, that's not, that'll probably be, yeah, that's Philip Rowe. So Ronnie Lawrence up here is getting 6.67 DraftKings points per minute and only allowing 1.39. So that 6.67 DraftKings points a minute, it translates to 129 points per fight for Ronnie Lawrence. So yeah, man, you're absolutely on the money here, Brady, that this is probably going to be the number one fight to own in DraftKings. That's not a 5-round fight. We got Jack Attack saying, let's see here. Is this Jones' third time coming in as a dog? Might cash a third time as a dog. Lawrence seems pretty legit, though. Yes, this definitely. He's a dog this time, and he was a much bigger dog in his first 2 fights. If he wins this fight, it'll be his third fucking time cashing as a dog, and it'll probably have his face on the Apple Pie Shitters Hall of Fame in the UFC. We got Bryan 3 saying, dog or pass kind of vibe this week. Yeah, dude, there's some of these favorite, like I like Uriah Hall in the main event, and he's a dog. He's as great a fighter as I think Strickland is. I think that line's just a little bit too wide. The women's fights, I don't really care. I wouldn't bet on Witt this week, and I wouldn't bet on Grutzenmacher, but those lines are, they're both kind of wide. Seeing as Garcia only has 1 UFC fight and it was a loss, so it's kind of hard to lay minus 300 on somebody that's 0-1 in the UFC and fairly new to the game. Yeah, it does. There are some fights where I like dogs here, but this is a really weird week. A lot of these fights are stay away from me. That's why we got to go balls deep into these fights and do these breakdowns so that we can kind of get some leans here. And I am definitely leaning Lawrence here. Like I say, it's probably going to be a 2-unit play with the Lawrence money line and then little sprinkles on the Lawrence third round prop and the Lawrence by decision prop for me. You got Dan Goldstein saying, won't be betting it big. Maybe a quarter unit on the Ronnie decision, or I might just suppress my degenerate thirst and pass. Dude, we got a great card next week, so there's definitely nothing wrong with passing, especially after last week's card. Brian saying, yeah, I agree. Miles for Stell saying, Ronnie's striking has me worried to bet him, but I can see the wrestle fuck happening. Miles, you got to check out his regional scene footage, especially the first 2 fights. Ronnie Lawrence's striking is better than you think it is, man. His striking is not bad. He does throw way too many spinning heel kicks. He absolutely loves that technique, but he equally offense with his legs and his hands. So I think it's better than people think it is. They see those wrestling numbers and they think that he's one-dimensional, but his striking is better than people think it is. And we got Devi saying, Sanford MMA is one of the 2 best gyms in the world. Ronnie has only gotten better. He started training there after the Contender Series, and Sanford has savages over there. Yeah, you know, it still says ATT on his Sherdog, on the Tapology. I think it still says ATT, but you're right. He is training at Sanford now. I hate that when they don't update that. Like, as a matter of fact, they don't even have a camp here right now. They're saying no associations. Yeah, I'd like to see them update that. Thank you for that great information there, Devi. That's fantastic because, yeah, Sanford MMA is just another reason to like Ronnie Lawrence in this one. If Trevin wins this one as a dog, he goes on the Mount Rushmore of high shares for sure. Yeah, Mount Rushmore, the Hall of Fame, whatever you want to call it, man. This guy's cashing a ton of underdog tickets, and if he does it 3 times in a row, man, there's going to be a lot of shit and a lot of apple pies. Appreciate your balls deep analytics. Keep up the good work. Okay, Bryan, thanks for hanging out with us, man. I appreciate it. Tom is saying, not forcing anything this week. As much as I want to win back my Phillips ticket, yeah, dude, don't force anything this week, man. There's no reason to. This is let's enjoy the fights. Let's identify the spots where we think we got a chance to make some money. And other than that, just sit back and enjoy the fights. We got a pay-per-view card with Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane next week. And we even have one more balls deep breakdown to look forward to later on today with Kai Kamaker versus Danny Chavez, the Colombian Warrior. So, you know, we're gonna do some balls deep breakdowns. We're gonna try. Your Uncle Weezy's gonna try to find you a spot or 2 this week. Just because it's a dumpster fire of a card doesn't mean we can't make a little bit of money. And then we got Devi saying American Top Team of Sunrise is where his head coach Roger Crawl is. So he trains there sometimes. Okay, cool. Thanks, Devi. That's some great inside information, and I appreciate you coming in with that, man. That's a big help because as much information as I'm privy to, it's great when we got 10 dudes in here and we're kind of having a conversation amongst each other, sharing the information that we all have. It helps everybody that watches the videos. It helps me. You guys, let's help each other out because we got to come together to take the money back that these bookies have been taking from people in MMA for so long, but not us, man, not the people watching the balls deep breakdowns. So thank you guys all for watching. God bless each and every one of you. I want to remind you, you can check me out on Twitter at MMA Weezy. This matchup template, you guys, the link to this is in the description of this video. You can use this to make your gambling decisions. I have a tab on every fight, and every statistic that we went through in this video is available for free in this document. Please download it for free. Use it to make some decisions when you're gambling on fights. Use it to do some deep research. It's all free. I make it available for you guys so that you guys can benefit from my hard work. Also in the description is the link to this week's Stat Diggers, where my man DFS by the numbers and we went balls deep into all 15 fights that were supposed to be on this card. And then we were like, oh man, we got to do 15 fights this week. And then as soon as we're done, they basically canceled 2 of the 15 fights, 2 of the more exciting fights too. So now it's down to 13, but we broke down all 15 fights on this card on Pub Sports Radio last night. The link to that show is also in the description. Check that out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. It wouldn't be the same doing these balls deep breakdowns unless I got to talk to you guys while I was doing it. Dan saying great work as always, Weezy. Appreciate the work you and Brady do. Hit the like on the way out. And I even forgot to say that. Yeah, hit the like. Subscribe to the channel if you're finding this content useful. I appreciate that very much. Thomas Howard saying thanks, Weezy. We got Dave Bandit saying thanks, Weezy. Thanks all you guys for coming out. Bryan, thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. I will catch you later on tonight on the next episode of Balls Deep Breakdown. Like I said, we're going to be doing Danny Chavez versus Kai Kamaker. Can't wait to do that one. And then if you guys have any suggestions for another Balls Deep Breakdown to do this week, leave it in the comments here or hit me up on Twitter. Thank you guys for watching. I'm going to sign off. Grayson saying thanks. Great work as always. Thank you for checking in, Grayson. Appreciate it, buddy. I'm going to sign off. I will catch you guys later on today on the next episode of Balls Deep Breakdown. God bless each and every one of you. Good day.